This is the disturbing case of Julio Mascabar, an ordinary cleaner who was faced with a difficult task: clean the vents. Little did he know, this would be the biggest mistake he would ever make. He was instructed to clean the vents and go no further. But this was all a setup, and he was being followed. As he descended deeper into Canopy's ventilation system, he felt off, but decided to ignore it. He didn't know that those vents would be the last place he'd ever be. Just watch. He woke up confused and scared, but unfortunately never found a way out. Some say Julio still roams the vents, waiting for someone to take his place. This is the unsettling case of Coda. Coda was an urban explorer who loved to explore abandoned buildings, until one day he found something he wasn't supposed to see. He was terrified and ran to the nearest person he could find. This would be the biggest mistake he would ever make. He explained the situation, and the man agreed to help. But little did Coda know, the man was the one who committed the crime, and he wasn't gonna let Coda get away easily. Just watch. The man dragged Coda to the deepest, darkest place he could find. He was trapped there for days, and he was starving. Until one day, he found a random piece of meat. He was starving, so without thinking, he ate it. That meat changed him. He was still alive, but different. This is the sinister case of Albert Musketeer. Albert was a canopy worker. He was known for being terrible at his job. He would always get distracted and play on his iPad. But one day, head of Canopy needed him to do an important job. He needed him to go retrieve some of Canopy's lost machinery. So he geared up and headed into the forest. He dove deep into the dark forest, but all he found was a rusty old pipe. He called it a day and headed back to his boss. He showed him what he had found, and his boss wasn't pleased. Just watch. The boss was tired of him, so he decided to make him better, and make him part of something magnificent. At last his creation was finished, and it was time to release him into the wild. Albert was trapped inside the machine, watching everyone get slaughtered. This is the frightening case of Jeffrey Armstrong Jr. Jeffrey was a homeless man who would always make mistakes. Little did he know this mistake would be his biggest one. He ventured through Canopy's office, looking for the job offered outside. He found the man he was looking for, and they discussed business in his office. Jeffrey was offered a job as a security guard, and he would guard the businessman's secret bunker. The businessman geared him up and sent him to go guard the bunker. Hours later, Jeffrey fell asleep but woke up to a strange noise. While he was checking it out, a clueless miner entered the bunker. The businessman was immediately notified. Jeffrey failed to complete his task. decided to give him an upgrade. He never made a mistake again. This is the case of Baxter Thorne. Baxter was a daddy's boy and loved to spend time with his father. When Baxter was older, he would always visit his dad after school. Baxter's father was head of Canopy, so he was treated like royalty by the company. But one day, when he went to visit his father, he was nowhere to be seen. Baxter found him lifeless on the floor, and he was full of rage. He took his anger out on the first person he saw. Baxter really enjoyed the thrill of the hunt. After he saw his father's lifeless body, something changed inside him. He had nothing left to lose. He was gonna make whoever killed his father pay. This would be the businessman's first kill. He fed him something from the test facility that changed him into a flesh-eating monster. The businessman killed more. And more. And more. And turned them into monsters. This is the case of Angus Flish. Angus was Canopy's ocean biologist, and he was really good at his job. Him and the boss got on really well, and he was one of their top workers. One day, the businessman sent him to go and collect some parts from deep down in Canopy's lake. Without questioning, he did what he was told. He dived in and ventured down to the no-man's land. After a while, he finally reached his destination. He found suspicious-looking eggs, so he collected them for the box. He continued to explore and found more items. Angus found a random cluster and decided to take it. Little did he know this would be the biggest mistake he would ever make. After he gathered all his things, he left the lake and went back to the boss. He showed the businessman what he had found, and he was very pleased. For once, someone got the job right. But Angus brought something in that triggered him. He couldn't let no one find out what he had done. He had to get rid of him. He injected him with the substance from the eggs. Just watch. He woke up and his body felt numb. He tried to get up and move, but his body was too weak, and he passed out. The next time he woke up, he was different. The businessman thought all his problems were gone, but they were just beginning. This is the case of old Dora Banshee. Eldora was an elderly woman, and her vision was very poor. One day, the businessman saw her walking down the road and noticed she was struggling to walk. He decided to give her a helping hand and take her to her home. Eldora couldn't thank him enough and invited him over for dinner. Little did they know they were being followed by James Rokes, businessman's co-worker, who always found him suspicious. Eldora sat him on the couch and went to go cook dinner. While Eldora was cooking dinner, the businessman saw something familiar and his mind started to twist. Just watch. The businessman quickly left the scene and left Eldora to rot. James took this as his chance to investigate, and he entered Eldora's home. James was in shock. He quickly left the mansion as fast as he could. James was gonna stop the businessman once and for all. Years later, her spirit still haunts the mansion, waiting for someone to take her place. This is the intimidating case of Callum. Callum was an engineer for a company called L3 Energy. His job was to clean the pipes and ensure everything was in order. One day, he was doing his ordinary job until he stumbled upon something he wasn't supposed to see. It was Coda, his friend who went missing long ago. But Coda was different. He was no longer himself. Callum quickly left the scene and told the police about what he had saw. The police agreed to help and take care of the situation. Coda was shot dead. The businessman was at home in his jammies when he saw about Coda's discovery on the news. He geared up and prepared to handle the situation. Just watch. He had to get rid of the witness. He tore him apart and put him back together again. But this time, he would be different. While the businessman was taking care of Callum, he had an unexpected visitor. It was James, and the businessman wasn't gonna let him get in the way of his experiment. James woke up in a cellar, not knowing what will happen next. But Callum, on the other hand, he changed forever. This is the terrifying case of Derry Watsons. Derry was an ordinary electrician until one day he got a call from the businessman. He needed Derry to go and repair some of Canopy's old server rooms. The businessman offered him a big pay, and without thinking he said yes. Derry felt a little off on the way, but money is money, so he continued his journey. But on his way, he found suspicious-looking goo and decided to touch it. Little did he know this would be the cause to one of his biggest problems. As soon as Derry arrived, he got to work. Meanwhile, James was still trapped when he heard the sounds of mining. He banged as loud as he could on the bars to get the person's attention. Turns out it was Albert, and he knew what was going on. He busted open James' cell, and they discussed about Baxter Thorne. They teamed up and hunted down the businessman. Hours later, Derry was still repairing wires, but he started to feel dizzy. At first he ignored it, but it really kicked in. The goo that he touched happened to be acid, and it messed with his head. He clicked something he wasn't supposed to click, and everything started to flood. He tried to flee the scene, but the businessman was waiting for him at the door. Just watch. The contaminated water entered Derry's body and left no human trace. All that was left was meat. This is the case of the businessman. The businessman was the owner of a company called Canopy. To everyone he seemed nice and friendly, but behind closed doors he was a murderer. After his most recent kill, he went to go visit the remains of his father. Meanwhile, Albert and James arrived at the server rooms, looking for the businessman. But the area started to contaminate, and infectious meat grew all over the walls. If they were gonna get to the businessman, they had to be careful. Eventually, they both reached their destination. But when they got there, they were in shock. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. A giant brain, covered in wires and old machinery. James found an old name tag, but before he could read it, he was shot dead. This triggered Albert. He had finally found his target, and the fight commenced. Albert was too weak and couldn't jump over the meat, so he needed to find a new way, and fast. The businessman thought Albert was dead, but he was quite the opposite. man's crimes would finally come to an end.
I did it my way. For what is a man? What has he got? If not himself, then he has not. Say the things he truly feels, and not the words of one who kneels. The record shows I took the blows, and did it my